Woo, it looks like Cheyenne's excited to be here.
That she is. Ruth, whenever you're ready to get started.
So Cheyenne was hatched in captivity in March of 1985. She's 36 years old. Harris's hawks are often bred as falconry birds in captivity, and then falconers purchase them to use them for falconry purposes. But in Cheyenne's life, she's been with other falconers throughout her life. One falconer that had her in the Northeast somewhere up north either left her out too long or she had escaped, and she ended up being out in the cold and got frostbite on both of her feet. If you look, you'll behave, you might be able to see. Do you see that she does not have talons on these two toes? And the same on the other side. She doesn't have talons on those two inside toes. And she had to have them removed because of frostbite. So we got her shortly after that from a center up in New York. So she has a unique personality. We've had her for the past 15 years or so. They're actually not from the East Coast. They're native to the desert areas of the West and the Southwest. And because of this, they can't tolerate the cold weather, especially if it's a moist cold, like snow or sleet. You were so good for the first 10 minutes, weren't you? Okay. So she has special heaters in her enclosure so that she can stay out until, it's about 32 degrees, and then she has to come inside. They're the only bird of prey that hunts in groups like wolves. There's usually 4 or more that will cooperate to flush out prey while others in the group capture it. And they'll even nest in groups up to 7 breeding pairs, plus their young from previous years. So they're very social, and Cheyenne loves to talk and interact with us, her handlers. In the wild, they'll hunt small mammals, snakes, lizards, and mostly jackrabbits, which are a much larger prey than our cottontails. And that's what requires this pack hunting mentality so that they can flush out the jackrabbits and capture them. And they also will perch on large prickly cactus. While their numbers are steady in the South and Central America, they are declining in parts of the United States. And that is our Cheyenne. Does anybody have any questions about Cheyenne?
It does not look like we have any questions.
Okay.
If you have any questions, feel free to just put them into the chat.
Cheyenne will be back later, but I guess now we'll go on to our next bird.
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay. Say, we'll be back. And say hello to Rogue. Rogue is our red-tailed hawk. She's currently 13 years old. She was born in March of 2008, and she came from Mercer County Wildlife Center. She'd been hit by a car while she was trying to eat something on the side of the road, and she lost a portion of her right wing. You can sort of see that that wing is a little shorter than the other and a little more scruffy. They had her for over 6 months while her wing healed, and she endured daily bandage changes and a lot of x-rays. And because she was handled so much, she ended up becoming relatively calm around people, so she was able to become an ambassador for her species. Red tails are very common in New Jersey. They're active during the day, which is called diurnal. They have excellent eyesight. They can pinpoint a squirrel in a large leafy tree from very far away. Mostly they hunt small mammals, rabbits, squirrels, chipmunks, rats and mice, small groundhogs, and the young of larger mammals. Sometimes they'll eat birds and sometimes fish, but this is not their normal diet. They're mature at 2 years old, which is when they get their red tail. If you see one without the red tail color, it means that it's under 2 years old. They nest in February, and the young usually stay with the parents until the next breeding season. Red tails display a courting behavior, sometimes locking talons in the air and spiraling down, similar to eagles. They mate for life until one of the pair dies. The most critical time for these birds, and pretty much all birds of prey, is their first year of life. Unfortunately, almost 90% of them don't make it for their first year. But once they're adults, they can live for over 20 years. We have enjoyed having Rogue. She is a very special bird. See, you can see with her wings out. Oh. And she has decided she's going to make everything flop around. But you can see with her wings out, you can see how the one wing is shorter than the other. And that's the wing that was injured. Okay, Rogue, say happy birthday, Cheyenne, to our old lady friend. And we will see you again. Thanks.
All right, it looks like Phantom is up and ready now. So Ruth, when you're ready.
This is Phantom, our barn owl. He is currently 11 years old, born in April of 2010. He came from a wildlife center in upstate New York, and they have a permit to specifically breed barn owls to try to get more of them back into the wild. Because on the East Coast or the eastern areas, barn owl populations are actually dwindling. So this was a program to be able to get more barn owls into the wild. But some of them are deemed unreleasable for various reasons. Phantom ended up being one of those birds. He was a little too tame, and they were worried that he wouldn't survive in the wild. So that's how we were able to get him from the rehab facility up in New York. Now, barn owls are actually uncommon now here, mostly because of habitat loss. They need large open fields to hunt, and they need cavities to nest in, because they don't build nests in trees, but in holes in the trees, barn lofts, even man-made owl boxes. They have the best hearing of all of the birds, being able to hear a mouse in tall grass from almost a mile away. There are stiff feathers on the face. That's called the facial disc. Phantom, if you look, you can see it's sort of a heart-shaped disc around his face. They help funnel the sound towards the ears. And the ears on either side of the head are actually asymmetrical. One is higher and one is lower. And this is how the sound comes through so that they have such perfect hearing. They eat mice, rats. In the wild, a nesting pair of owls can actually eat 20 or more mice, voles, moles every day, even up to 50 small mammals if they're feeding young. They're a great help to farmers to remove these pests. Barn owls breed several times a year, depending on how plentiful their food sources are. They can have 2 to 7 young. They live less than 10 years normally in the wild, but can live up to 18 or 20 years in captivity. We named him Phantom because when he sleeps, he likes to put one foot up and bring one wing across. He looks like the Phantom of the Opera. When you see them fly at night, want to put your wings out? All you see is that white underwing and the white breast. So they also have a nickname. They're called the ghost owl. Actually, there are a lot of webcams that you can look up online. Most of them are from California that show barn owls in their nest box with their clutch of babies. If anybody's interested in actually seeing them in the wild.
Yes, I do specifically recall one video. It was a young barn owl who was hearing thunder for the first time. It was really adorable.
Does anybody have any questions about Phantom?
So it does not look like there's any questions for Phantom. So when you're ready, we can proceed.
Okay. Say happy birthday, Cheyenne. Yes. Okay. Okay.
My name is Susan Tyson. I'm an avian, exotic, and wildlife veterinarian at Mount Laurel Animal Hospital in New Jersey. Today, I will be doing a short presentation on West Nile virus. West Nile virus is an arthropod-borne flavivirus, meaning it is transmitted by insects. It was first isolated in 1937 in Uganda, but not reported in the US until 1999, where it rapidly spread from the East Coast. The most common form of transmission is mosquito-borne. However, other vectors have been implicated. Alternate routes of infection include horizontal transmission among corvids, ingestion of West Nile virus infected organs and blood contamination of wounds. Bird-to-bird transmission has also been confirmed by detection of viremia in magpies. A viremia is when the virus is found in the blood. A reservoir species is the population of organisms or the specific environment in which an infectious pathogen naturally lives and reproduces, or upon which the pathogen primarily depends for its survival. An amplifying species is an organism in which an infectious agent, such as a virus or bacteria, that is pathogenic for other species and is able to replicate rapidly into high concentrations. This is a species that increases transmission. An example would be crows and West Nile virus. Dead end, incidental, or accidental host is an organism that generally does not allow transmission to the definitive host, such as birds being the definitive host, thereby preventing the parasite from completing its development. West Nile virus also infects over 300 vertebrate species, including marine mammals, rodents, bats, horses, camelids, canids, felids, and reptiles. Birds are the natural reservoir host of West Nile virus. However, species susceptibility, morbidity, and mortality varies. Species such as pigeons and chickens show low virus loads, while other species, including the songbirds, exhibit high virus loads without clinical disease, making them a more effective and competent viral reservoir for West Nile transmission over other species. This slide from the CDC shows the transmission cycle of West Nile virus. Clinical signs of West Nile virus in avian or bird species appear 10 to 12 days after infection. Neurologic deficits are the most common clinical finding in West Nile virus infection, and a complete blood count, that's a CBC, may reveal an elevated white blood cell count. Clinical findings may include ataxia or inability to walk, falling over, or difficulty keeping balance. We may see feather abnormalities, inflammation of the heart muscle, inflammation of the joints, rashes, inflammation of organs such as the pancreas and the liver. We also may see inflammation of the back of the eye. Relapses of neurologic signs can occur in birds after initial infection for up to 4 years. This map was created by NASA and the CDC to map the spread of West Nile virus in the infancy of its arrival to the U.S. West Nile virus is a zoonotic and epizootic infection of great importance in avian wildlife, which serve as critical vectors due to their high viral load and has been well documented in captive and non-captive avian wildlife. The CDC promotes techniques for prevention of West Nile virus in humans and captive wildlife collections. It is recommended to reduce mosquito exposure during times of peak activity at dusk and dawn. Mosquito nets should be placed around outdoor enclosures, and the removal of standing water will eliminate and reduce mosquito breeding sites. There is no antiviral treatment available to date for West Nile virus in birds. With the recent loss of marketed vaccines and the degree of infectivity of West Nile virus in birds, it is important to continue research to develop a labeled vaccine for avian species. Birds become infected by West Nile virus after a mosquito bite. West Nile virus infects over 300 avian species and can cause death. Your state has programs to help reduce mosquito populations. Please visit the CDC for more tips on prevention. Mosquito control is key to protecting wildlife and humans. One simple task is to eliminate standing water. Empty bird baths, dispose of unused tires or buckets which collect water. Empty standing water from flower pots. Local ponds should have fountains and devices to keep water moving. And don't forget, mosquito control should be applied inside your home too. Think about those evenings you can't even go outside. This may indicate you need to apply mosquito prevention techniques around your home. Thank you for listening to my lecture. If you have any further questions on mosquito control or West Nile virus, please visit our website at Freedom Center or check out the CDC. I am also including a list of references with information on West Nile virus.
Well, this is Furby. Furby is an eastern screech owl. He's 12 years old. He was hatched in May of 2009. So he's getting to be a slightly older guy too. And Furby's a special circumstance. He was found under a tree as a tiny nestling. So we had asked the finders to put him back in the nest because screech owls are cavity nesters and they build their nest in holes in trees. But the next day he was on the ground again and they put him back. The third day he was again on the ground. So this time it became pretty clear that the mother was pushing him out since there were other nestlings that she was caring for that were still in the nest. And usually birds will do this if they don't have the food supply to feed all the chicks, removing the weaker ones to provide enough for the others. But they'll also do this if they know something's wrong with the chick. And that's what happened with our Furby. Because as he grew, we saw that he was much smaller than a screech owl should be for his age. And his feathers were not thick and smooth, but sparse and rough. You can see he's got a lot of little stunted feathers all around him, little stunted wings. So even after his first molt, his feathering was deficient and we knew he wouldn't survive in the wild. So we had to make an enclosure for him indoors because he can't tolerate temperatures below about 55 degrees. He doesn't have the feathering to be able to insulate himself. But we did have a full workup done with the vet who happily told us that his heart, liver, kidneys, and his bones appeared normal because a lot of times when they do have these abnormalities that are genetic or birth defects, there's more going on inside than what you can see on the outside. But happily, we were able to find out that he was in good shape otherwise, besides his feathering. So he became an ambassador for his species. Screech owls come in two different color patterns called phases. Furby is a gray phase. The other phase is red, which is a rusty reddish brown color. Some gray phases are more grayish white. Some are more grayish brown. which is closer to Furby's coloration. Screech owls are very common in New Jersey, nocturnal like all owls, and they nest in April and May. They can have 2 to 5 young. They eat small rodents and some insects, such as moths and crickets, in the spring and the summer months. And there's Furby. Does anybody have any questions on Furby?
We do have one question. It's from Alex. And she's asked if red is bigger than Furby.
Yes, a little bit. In raptors, all raptor species, the female is always bigger than the male. And in screech owls, it's the same. The females are bigger than the male. But in Furby's case, Furby is very small, even for a male. Furby's about maybe 140 grams. Red is probably about 180 to 190 grams. And male screech owls would normally be about 160 grams. So Furby's still a little under for a male. There, are you settled now?
And then just to clarify between the two different phases, is the red phase tend to be larger than the gray phase, or is the gray phase larger than the red, or are they kind of even?
No, there's no difference as far as, it's just a color change, but there's no difference in their temperament, in their habitat, in their size, diet, anything. There's no difference. It's just the only distinction is males are smaller, females are larger, regardless of what phase they are. Now, years ago, when I first started to do this about 25 years ago, we found that there were more red-faced screech owls in the south and southeast, and more gray-phased screech owls in the northern states. But since they interbreed, we found that in more recent years, we're finding pretty equal numbers of red phase and gray phase all over. Now, there's also a western screech owl. They're actually a little smaller, both males and females, than the eastern screech owls, but they have the same color phases as well.
Perfect, thank you. So we have another question. So it's coming from Jen. She wants to know what Furby's favorite thing is. Is it like a favorite food or place that he likes?
With all of these birds, their favorite thing is food. That's pretty much the extent of it. Furby will actually stand and wait for his food to be handed to him, and then runs away and starts to eat it. That's his favorite thing. You have to remember, even though we have these birds in captivity currently, they're still wild animals. They're not pets. So they don't necessarily have, they all have a different personality, but they still exhibit their wild behaviors. He does have some toys and bells and things in his enclosure, but he's really most interested in his mice.
Perfect, thank you. It does not look like there's any more questions in the chat, so we can move forward when you're ready.
Okay, say happy birthday, Cheyenne.
So this is Odin. Odin was hatched in March of 2015 and came to us through our rehabilitation department when he was an older fledgling. He is 6 years old. He was found in central New Jersey and taken to a rehabilitation center in Mercer County, where it was discovered that he was almost blind. Tests revealed he had contracted a parasite called Toxoplasma gondii, which invaded the back portion of the eyes and caused permanent damage. While he can see to find food and fly from perch to perch in his enclosure, he was not releasable because he could not hunt for food. Great horned owls are very common in New Jersey, and if you hear hooting at night, it is probably a great horned owl, which is that classic hoo, hoo, hoo.
This is Cologne, which we thought was a perfect name for a skunk. Cologne was found in a barn after being kicked in the head by a horse. He was born in April of 2015 and was very young when he was brought into us. After his skull healed, he was found to have some permanent neurological damage, and he was blind in one eye, which made him unable to be released. Skunks are, of course, most known for their smell. Cologne has been descented. The glands under the tail produce an oily liquid that can be sprayed directly at the predator up to 10 feet away. However, these animals are not aggressive and they'll avoid confrontation before spraying. They get into trouble with humans because of their curiosity. They're either digging for grubs in the lawn or they're hiding under sheds and porches. They don't hibernate like bears, but they will become less active during bouts of cold weather and usually will sleep through the worst few days. They're omnivores, which means they'll eat most things they come across, with the majority of their diet being insects, fruits, plants, eggs, small reptiles, small mammals, and fish. Most of their foraging takes place at night, making them nocturnal, and they can have from 2 to 10 young in a litter in the springtime, and the kits stay with the mother usually until the fall, and they are native only to the Americas. Does anybody have any questions about Cologne?
So cute.
We do have a question. It's from Alex. Is tomato juice really the best way to get rid of skunk smell?
No. A mixture of hydrogen peroxide, dish detergent, a splash of vinegar, that is the best solution. The reason that you need the peroxide and the detergent is to loosen the oils, because that spray is actually an oil. And that's why it seems to stay around and the smell sticks around for such a long period of time. So you need to be able to lift the oil out of whatever was sprayed before you can start to get rid of the odor.
And Ruth knows this from experience because her dog Pierce has been sprayed by a skunk a couple of times.
Yeah. Yep. I'm actually very happy that he's looking around. Usually skunks are very timid. Really, people might think they're aggressive, but they're really not. And usually when Cologne is being held, he curls up like a pill bug. So he tucks his face into his belly and brings his tail up over his face. And then he's very, very hard to see. But right now he's actually being very good. I had to wake him to bring him in. He was sound asleep because it's daytime.
It does not look like it, no. So whenever you're ready, we can move on to the next section.
Okay. Say happy birthday, Cheyenne. Bye.
And there she is. There's our Shy.
Yes. She's starting to get a little testy now. She doesn't quite understand why she's in and out, in and out, in and out. But it's your birthday. Yeah. Hopefully we're going to get lots of juicy mice for you.
Does anyone have any questions in regards to Cheyenne or any of the other animals that we have seen? So we have a question from Froggy, and the question was Cheyenne hatched today? As in, is it literally her birthday today?
No, we don't actually have the exact date of her hatch. It was in March of 1985. So the center that she came from was World Bird Sanctuary in Missouri. And you can see on this, might be able to see on this foot. Can you see this silver band? I'm rolling
Yes,
around.
we can.
Okay, that is actually her records from where she was hatched and bred. And that stays on her basically for life. That's how we were able to prove to the different agencies her age.
All right, we have another question from Linda about how much does Cheyenne weigh?
Everything that we do with the birds as far as weight is concerned is always in grams or kilograms. We don't use the pound scales. So Cheyenne would be probably about, I want to say maybe 18 to 1900 grams. They're usually a little bit heavier going in from winter to spring, and then a little lighter going in from spring to fall. They have a much higher appetite and calorie requirement during the winter, so they get a little more food when it's really cold. But she will take off probably another 100 or 120 grams between now and the fall.
Excellent. We have another question. It's actually about Ed. So the question is, what happened to Ed to put him in your care?
Ed came to us as a little gosling, still yellow feathers, but someone felt that they needed rescue, and they captured 3 goslings together that they said were orphaned. But instead of calling rehabbers right away, they cared for them for a couple of weeks, and all they fed them was grass clippings. So during that period of time, 2 out of the 3 goslings had died. And when the 3rd gosling was still alive but not doing well, they finally called a rehabber, which was us. So when we got Ed in, he had severe metabolic bone disease. He was not getting enough calcium. He was not getting enough protein. Both of his wings were deformed and curled out to the side. His left leg was extremely bowed out. So we had to do something called cobbling, where we had to lace his legs together to try to straighten out the legs. We had to wrap both wings to try to straighten out the wings. And he started to improve right away with the proper diet and care, but one of his wings never straightened out. So that's why he ended up being unreleasable. He has a condition that's called angel wing. So remember, if you find an animal in distress, don't just assume that you can care for it. Don't necessarily believe everything you read on the internet. Contact a rehabber right away. Let us guide you through, or let us take the animal in so it gets the proper care. Mm-hmm.
So we have a question from Linda. What kind of sounds is Cheyenne making right now? Like, what does that mean?
Yes, I wasn't sure if anybody could actually hear it because it's really low, but she's basically communicating with me, just a relaxed kind of, it almost sounds like a low hum, but she's looking around. She's trying to figure out why she's just sitting here, because usually when she's out, we're doing things. But it's just a little bit of a bantering back and forth. She's not necessarily trying to say anything specific to me, but I'm glad that you can hear it, because the Harris hawks are definitely social birds, not like other raptors that are solitary. And they communicate like this back and forth all the time in the wild. You finally noticed your happy birthday banner, huh? Yes. Yes. You're so pretty. Such a good girl. Do you have more to say? Yeah? More to say?
Sounds like she's content at holding the record of being the oldest captive Harris hawk in North America. So we have another question from Froggy. Does Cheyenne get along with any of the other birds there?
they would never, ever be housed together when we do programs in person and various people have various birds. They don't really try to attack or go after each other, but in the wild, she wouldn't intermingle with most of the birds that we have here, especially because she's from the Southwest. So no, it's not even something we would attempt. We would never house any of the different species together because you just never know. They're wild, so you really just never know.
We have another question from Rosalind. The question is, how can we donate to your amazing organization?
Well, there are several ways. You can go onto our website. There are various donation buttons. You can send us a check, which on the website, our address is listed. You can go into our shop and purchase various items that we have on for sale or an adoption package.